You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I hope you're all strapped in because we're going on a trip. We're going on a podcast. Is that a trip? I don't know. The same. It might be a trip. It depends on what you're taking before the podcast. Welcome to the Chris Voss Show, folks. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for being here. As always, we embrace you. We hug you. Thank you for being part of the Chris Voss Show family, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you. Not even in a small way. Unless I meet you in person, I might judge you. I don't know. But the show itself does not judge you. Anyway, guys, please, if you haven't already, or refer the show to your friends, neighbors, relatives, go to youtube.com, hit that bell notification button. It's kind of an achievement you can do today. You can go hit that bell notification button and say to yourself, I've done everything I need to do today. And you can go back to bed and just take the rest of the day off. I said so. Also, go to all of our groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to the big LinkedIn newsletter. The big, the LinkedIn group that's over there. That's always a good thing. It's under the name of the show, Beacons of Leadership. Also, go check out the new coaching speaker course site that we have up. It's the Chris Voss Leadership Institute.com. You can get me to consult for you, speak for you, and all that kind of crazy stuff if you want. I mean, you don't have to. It's not like required, but go there and check it out. Subscribe to the list over there and the podcast and everything we're doing as well. Hi, folks. Chris Voss here with a little station break. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. We'll resume here in a second. I'd like to invite you to come to my coaching, speaking, and training courses website. You can also see our new podcast over there at chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Over there, you can find all the different stuff that we do for speaking engagements if you'd like to hire me, training courses that we offer, and coaching for leadership, management, entrepreneurism, podcasting, corporate stuff. With over 35 years of experience in business and running companies as CEO, I think I can offer a wonderful breadth of information and knowledge to you, or anyone that you want to invite me to for your company. Thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you listening to the show, and be sure to check out chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Now back to the show. Today we have an amazing author on the show. Oh, did I mention Goodreads? Goodreads.com/Chris Voss, since we have an author on the show. We should always mention that because their books are... Today we have an amazing author on the show. As always, brilliant minds. This one is going to be really brilliant because he has PhD behind his name, and clearly I don't. His new book that just came out June 7th, 2022. I have the P part, but not the HD, but it's mostly because I'm 54 and old. You can figure that joke out. That's an old person joke. The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, a new history from the shadow of the dinosaurs to us. Steve Bruchatti is on the show with us today, and he's going to be talking to us about his newest book. Steve, did I get your name right?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I just want to make sure I hit that right. I am seriously starving right now on intermittent fasting, and so I can't feel my legs. He is a PhD, of course, and an American paleontologist who studies at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. He is the author of the international bestseller, I'm not sure that was a Scotland accent, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. They must have elected somebody that brought them all down. The paleontology advisor on the Jurassic World film franchise. He was helping out on the most recent one. He has named more than 15 new species. I have a few for him on that I found on Tinder, including the Tyrannosaur. I'm clearly not a scientist. Pinocchio Rex. Well, we're gonna have to learn about that. The raptor, and several ancient animals. His research and writing has been featured in Science, the New York Times, Scientific American, and other publications. Welcome to the show, Steve. How are you?
All right. Thanks, Chris. I'm very good. I'm joining you from Scotland here, from Edinburgh, where I'm very lucky to teach at one of the world's great universities. And I'm one of those people that has a great job. I dig up dinosaurs and mammals and other fossils for a living, write books, consult on films. It's a whole lot of fun. I'm just looking forward to talking fossils with you.
There you go. Let's talk. So do you have a .com or anything you want people to go find you on the interwebs, Twitter or anything?
That's way is Twitter, and it's just my name. It's at Steve Brusatte, Brusatt. Easy to find there. And if you like to, in your Twitter feed, people self-promoting their books nonstop, then please follow me on Twitter.
And just a quick question before we get in the book, because it's stuck in my brain now. What is a Pinocchio Rex? Does his nose grow? Is he made out of wood? What's going on there?
It's a cheeky nickname for this dinosaur. So a few years ago, some construction workers in southern China were digging the foundation for a building, and the backhoe hit this really hard stuff. They thought maybe it was a water main or an old pipe or something like that, but it turned out to be the skeleton of a tyrannosaur, a cousin of T-Rex, living in Asia at the same time T-Rex was living in North America. And I was invited to help study it by my Chinese colleagues. And so we gave it a new name. We called it Chongosaurus sinensis. That's the formal name, a bit of a tongue twister. So we thought it needed a nickname. And Pinocchio Rex came to mind because this thing has a really long nose. Just think T-Rex, but with its skull stretched out. So that hence the nickname. Whether it was a liar, I don't know, but it definitely had a long nose.
Probably. I mean, I guess Amber Heard was taken. Let's see.
No comment on any American jurisprudence right now. I left the country to get away from that kind of a circle.
I'll own that joke to myself. I'm not sure what it means anyway. So let's see. She lied. Let's see. So tell us about the new book. What motivated you want to write this book? Of course, you've written several books, haven't you?
Yeah. So the new book's all about mammals. It's called The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, and as you mentioned, and it's a 325 million year evolutionary story. It goes back to the time that our ancestors split off from the rest of the family tree of life. They left the reptiles behind and they started that march towards. And so we are a mammal. This is our story. This is our deep ancestry. This is our origin story. And so what I try to convey in the book is how our family has survived and endured over so many millions of years, how we lived alongside the dinosaurs. Our furry little ancestors lived alongside the dinosaurs for over 150 million years. Wow. These mammals had to survive in the shadows. They had to survive underground. They had to survive at night in this world dominated by T-Rexes and Brontosauruses. But in doing so, they developed so many sublime adaptations: hair to keep themselves warm, milk to feed their babies, big brains, high intelligence, keen senses. These are all things we have today because we inherited them from ancestors. So we have a rich, rich, rich origin story. That's what I want to get across in the book. And I want to tell the story, not just of us, but of the 6,000 other mammals alive today: bats and whales and elephants and monkeys and dogs and cats, all of these amazing animals that we all.
So this is our history then. Now, I was having trouble. There's like, I can't find references to the Bible in here because it says like 240 million years old and stuff in here. What part of the Bible is this take place in? Genesis or?
Well, depending on your belief system, all of this might be compressed into a few lines of Genesis. For Christians, that's actually true. You take the Bible as allegory. Now, if you take the Bible literally, you're going to have a bit of a different worldview than those of us who study fossils. And if anybody like that is listening, hey, look, check out the book if you're at all interested in just learning about paleontology, whatever your background is, whatever your mindset is. And, take a look at what evidence we have, how we find this evidence. I think you'll find it interesting. But no, you're not going to find a lot of mention of the Bible in the book, although we do talk about some interesting stories from history, where some scientists and even some preachers in the past discovered mammal bones, petrified skeletons, what they made of those bones. This was the foundation, actually, of paleontology. People a few hundred years ago encountering these petrified skeletons and trying to figure out what to make of them.
Oh, wow. Crazy. So let's talk about the book. The book's got, I should mention, it's super thick and it's got tons of great pictures and drawings in here. It's really interesting and compelling, especially since I can't read and I just like pictures for the most obvious of reasons. But tell us some more details about what's in the book, or maybe tease out some things that might stick out. Ooh, look, these are always a favorite, kind of a saber tooth.
One of my favorites, the saber-tooth tiger. I'm going to grab a copy of the book. So it looks like this, by the way. That's the cover. There you go. The Rise and Reign of Mammals. Beautiful artwork, by the way. There's an artist named Todd Marshall who did the cover, and we have new artwork from him in every single chapter. So you want to see things like woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, all kinds of other fantastic mammals that used to live. Todd has drawn them in the book. He's a rock and roll artist. He actually got started as an artist in the rock scene in the 80s in LA. He's been a video game artist, so he's brought these animals to life. So there are a lot of images, a lot of photos, and it's not too thick. It's about 400 pages of text, but I'm covering 325 million years of evolution. And really what I want to do is tell that story from start to finish. I want people to understand where we came from, our deepest ancestry, and I want people to appreciate our history. We come from a long legacy of mammals that have endured everything the earth has thrown at, whether it's temperature spikes, ice ages, rising and falling sea levels, volcanoes, asteroids, all these things mammals have survived, including the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. And maybe that's the neatest story of all. And I tell that story in chapter 5. So, 66 million years ago, this 6-mile wide rock falls out of the sky. It's traveling faster than a speeding bullet, literally. And it smashed into what's now Mexico with the force of over 1 billion nuclear bombs put together. It unleashed chaos, tsunamis, wildfires, earthquakes, all kinds of bedlam. The dinosaurs could not cope. T-Rex was there to witness it. Triceratops was there to witness it, but they succumbed. But we had ancestors that survived because they were small, because they were adaptable, because they could hide easily, because they could eat lots of different food, because they could grow fast. So to me, that's maybe the most remarkable thing of all, that our ancestors actually survived that worst day in the history of the earth. And if they didn't, we wouldn't be here and having this conversation.
That's true. I mean, we even survived my 9 ex-wives. So, there's a lot of danger.
Mammals are very resilient.
Yeah, we are. So far. Yeah. So I'm looking at the picture here, and I'm not sure if I held it up first, right the first time. But, man, if you were a dentist in 200 million years ago, there was a lot of money going on there, right? Yeah. Big saber-tooth.
Well, these, what's remarkable about saber-tooths is that because they're mammals like us, they only had a set of baby teeth, a set of adult teeth. That's it. Like a dinosaur or a lizard, a frog. I mean, they can go through teeth throughout their lives, just like a conveyor belt of teeth in their mouth, but not mammals. Wow. So that saber-toothed tiger, those things had canine teeth that were like a foot long. And if they broke one of those things, they were screwed. They were done. So they had to be very careful, and they probably didn't go around wielding those things like a knife-wielding maniac just with reckless abandon. They probably used them more as ice picks to make a very precision strike into the throats of their victims. That's what we think.
Wow. You're going to give me nightmares.
Nice.
Yeah. So
yeah,
there you go. You do a real detailed history. It's got lots of great reviews on it. It's #1 bestseller in endangered species. Congratulations for that.
Yeah, I peek at the Amazon and Goodreads reviews probably more than I should. They tell authors not to look, or look occasionally, because you get those 1-star reviews sometimes that really get you down. But when I last looked, there was some good feedback from people. I was very happy to see, and the book's been out for a week now, so I'm just glad that some people are picking it up, are reading it, and are engaging with it. That's really all you could ask as an author.
Yeah, and it's really detailed, and it kind of weaves a little bit of storytelling. You talk about, kind of almost the experiences of what, this animal is going through, what's happening in its environment, giving details and locations. It's very interesting, especially if people are into dinosaurs. But even then, just understanding the history of like, here's a picture of a human's brain, a dog's brain. Well, it's no wonder my dogs are idiots. A Morganucondan brain. I think
that's the very first mammal. That's the oldest mammal we find.
Wow.
Over 200 million years old.
There's a Cyanarpus.
Yeah.
Right.
These were some of the ancestors of mammals. So you can see in this. So this is a really cool illustration. And Sarah Shelley did this illustration. She works with me in my lab in Edinburgh now. She was my first PhD student. She's now one of the world experts on early mammal evolution, and she's a great artist. So in addition to Todd Marshall's new artistic reconstructions of all these mammoths and saber-tooths, we have Sarah that's provided a lot of detailed illustrations of things like brains and jaws and teeth, the more technical stuff to convey these details of mammals in ways that words just simply cannot.
Yeah. The picture of the whale skeleton. Holy crap. So we're excited to announce my new book is coming out. It's called Beacons of Leadership, Inspiring Lessons of Success in Business and Innovation. It's going to be coming out on October 5th, 2021. And I'm really excited for you to get a chance to read this book. It's filled with a multitude of my insightful stories, lessons, my life, and experiences in leadership and character. I give you some of the secrets from my CEO entrepreneur toolbox that I use to scale my business success, innovate, and build a multitude of companies. I've been a CEO for, 33, 35 years now. We talk about leadership, the importance of leadership, how to become a great leader, and how anyone can become a great leader as well. Or order the book wherever fine books are sold. Now, how small, and not to make it all about us, screw the dinosaurs, how small, I mean, what was it, what things of us were to survive that big nuclear bomb hit? Were we fish at that point, or like cellular stuff, or were we just like, we were Steve Boucher just hanging out in the
Yeah, I'll answer that in a second. I just want to say something about whales first, because you mentioned the photo of the whale, and I don't know if I can maybe be able to find this in the book.
I came across it.
I have this chapter on extreme mammals. Chapter 7 is all about bats and whales and elephants. And here we go. Here's some images you can see.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Yeah. So this is a blue whale, and this whole skeleton, that's the one that's on the ceiling at the Natural History Museum in London. And then the skull, this whole page, photos of a skull, and that's a friend of mine, a paleontologist named Travis Park, standing next to the skull. This blue whale would treat Travis like a piece of popcorn.
Wow.
And that just conveys how big whales are. And I think we need to appreciate that more, because blue whales are the biggest organisms of any kind that have ever lived in the entire 4.5 billion years of the Earth. Look at how big they are. And they live now. They live in the same world as we do. And imagine if they were extinct and all we had were some petrified bones. Surely we would hold these things in as much esteem and as much reverence as dinosaurs. So let's appreciate it. So anyway, that's my kind of spiel on whales. I love whales because they're so extreme. But you asked about the asteroid. So when the asteroid hit, our ancestors are already pretty advanced. They were already mammals, proper mammals. They had hair all over their bodies.
Oh, really?
Brains, yeah. They fed their bait. They had molar teeth like we do with all these different peaks and valleys they could use to chew their food. So they would have, our ancestors, the ones that stared down that asteroid 66 million years ago, would have been about the size of a mouse or a gerbil, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe up to rat size, but very small. And they would have been covered in fur, and they would have been, pretty smart animals, pretty agile. And I think if you saw one of these things, you'd probably just think, oh, that's some kind of little mouse or something. But it was that meekness, that humbleness, that allowed them to survive when so many bigger things like dinosaurs died.
Wow. So basically rat size. So they were politicians, most likely. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, maybe in temperament. Yeah.
That explains why they survived nuclear war too. Anyway, this is really cool in the book. What are some other things that we can tease out to readers to get them to pick up the book?
I think there's some stories I have in the book about how we know what we know. I don't want to beat the reader over the head with all kinds of details on different scientific techniques and with lots of math or anything like that. I haven't done that, but I do try to give little snippets of stories of how it is that we actually find fossils. Where do we go? How do we locate them? How do we study them once we find them? And so I tell stories of working in New Mexico. I'm just back from New Mexico. I was just there about a week and a half ago with some of my students and some of my colleagues, and we were out there looking for fossils of those first mammals that lived after the asteroid, the ones that really took that crown away from the dinosaurs. And we find a lot of their bones, a lot of their teeth out in New Mexico. Sometimes we find their skeletons. And what these fossils tell us is that very soon after the asteroid hit, those ancestors of ours, which were only the size of a mouse or a rat while they were living with the dinosaurs, within a few 100,000 years, they're the size of pigs. Within about 1 million or 2 years, they're the size of cows. So mammals got bigger and bigger really quick after the asteroid hit. And we know that from these real fossils that we find just a couple hours drive north of Albuquerque, out in the Badlands. And, so one of my favorite places to work, beautiful country, really important fossils. And some of the best fossils are found by our students. And I tell the story of how a student on our crew who was just a few days out of her freshman year of college. She'd never been looking for fossils before. She came out, and after a few days of getting her bearings and not really finding much, she discovered a new species, a totally new species of mammal that lives in Africa. So I think stories like this show how fun paleontology is, how it's an adventure, how it's still a science of discovery, but also how anybody can make discoveries. You don't have to have the PhD letters. You don't have to be a professor. You can be a student. You can be sometimes hikers find fossils, farmers. I mentioned the farmers in China, construction workers in China, which I mentioned. Anybody can find a fossil. It's a very accessible science. That's what I love about paleontology.
Do I get a reward when I find a fossil?
Well, it depends where you're looking and who you're looking for.
I've got a few fossil friends on Facebook, actually, that they're walking fossils. I think that's what I've been called myself, actually. I think my niece and my nephew refer to me as the old fossil.
Well, that's a compliment. I love fossils. Plenty of people love fossils. They're very endearing. So
I usually do until they start throwing things at me. This is kind of interesting. One of the outtakes from your book, the first elephants were the size of miniature poodles. What the hell's going on there?
Isn't that crazy? I mean, you think about elephants today. I mean, they're big. They're the biggest mammals that live on land. They're 5 or 6 tons, the biggest elephants. I mean, you see them at the zoo or at the circus or something. I mean, they're gargantuan, right? Mm-hmm. And there have been even bigger elephants that used to live. And we find their fossils. And then there's very famous extinct elephants like woolly mammoths and so on. When you think of elephants, you think of giants, but they did not start that way. I mean, all big things, they have to start somewhere. And so elephants started very humble, and way back some, 50-ish million years ago, 55 million years ago, give or take, the first elephants were evolving in Africa, and they were just the size of little lapdogs. They would have been very cute. They would have, barely even come up to the ankle of one of today's elephants.
Wow.
That just goes to show over long time periods, evolution can do remarkable things. And just like dinosaurs started out small, the first dinosaurs were just the size of house cats. The first elephants were small too.
Yeah. Well, that's probably good, because every hot chick on Instagram would probably have a small elephant if they're still that size.
Great pets, rather than a chihuahua or whatever, get yourself a tiny little elephant and have it around on your leash. Yeah.
And they probably didn't do that annoying bark that did chihuahuas do. I can't stand
it. No, just a really kind of probably shriek-ish shrill trumpeting of the trunk. I don't know.
I'll go for that over the I've broken up with people over their yappy chihuahuas. Let's see. I mean, fair is fair.
This mammals, though, I gotta say, the chihuahuas, dogs are mammals. But the thing is, I talk about it in the book about how we domesticated dogs and how we took wild wolves and turned them into things like, chihuahuas, and how crazy that it's us, a species of mammal, making our own species of mammals, sometimes quite annoying, but also beautiful ones. You think of all the wonderful dogs and cats and other pets that we all love.
I have Siberian Huskies. Is it true that they're the first conversion from wild to domestic dogs? Is that true?
I'm not quite sure which of the modern day dogs are kind of most similar to the ancestral wolf, but certainly Huskies, it would make sense if they are, because they really do look a lot like. So even if they're not like the closest relatives, I think they're a pretty good approximation for what that first domesticated dog would be. And this was like more than 10,000 years ago. Humans took wolves that were probably hanging around their campfires, drawn by the smell of a mammoth barbecue, and started to throw them scraps of meat and started to domesticate. So dogs go back a long way.
I thought the earliest domesticated mammals were husbands. Anyway, this is really funny. This is really funny outtake from your book. The first whales had legs.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on? And did they get rid of the legs because they were tired of sharing land with our stupid asses?
So whales are remarkable. I already talked about the blue whale and how big it is and how we should treasure it. But blue whales, of course, are just, one of the endpoints of an amazing evolutionary transition. Whales are mammals, which means their ancestors came from the land. So whales developed from animals that started on the land. And about 55 million years ago, we start seeing fossils of that age of these little animals, these little mammals with hooves. They looked like a little baby deer, like Bambi.
Wow.
And these things we can tell are starting to evolve in the direction of whales. And then over the course of the next 10 million years or so of fossils, we see this beautiful sequence. It's like the scenes in a movie or like a flip book, progressing. You can see this small little animal with hooves get bigger and bigger, turn its arms and legs into flippers, lose its legs entirely, evolve a big head, and become something that can only live in the water. So it is an amazing thing to think that the first whales had legs and arms. They were walking whales. They could move on land. They could also swim. So when you see a whale, just remember that its ancestors lived on land and moved into the water. That just goes to show how remarkable evolution is.
Was it maybe they were just skipping leg day at the gym and they lost the legs? I mean, that's...
Hey, we weren't there to witness it, right? So
guys, I think you need to go back to the drawing board and do more study, because a couple of this stuff sounds like guys at the gym that I know. Let's see. I mean, that's crazy to think about. Those would have to be some hell of legs to, have a blue whale walking around.
Yeah, well, they weren't the size of blue whales at that time. After they totally lost their legs, they lost the hind legs. They turned the front legs, the arms, into the and
so after you
that they got really big.
So these guys are like me. After they quit using their legs, they got fat. I get it. This is kind of interesting. Charles Darwin was flummoxed by fossil mammals in South Africa and seemed to combine features of many modern mammal groups. So was he full of crap then?
So Charles Darwin was probably the most famous dropout of the University of
he's from the same college too, huh? Wow.
So it started here in the 1820s as a medical student. His father wanted him to become a doctor. Dad put a lot of pressure on him. But Darwin, there was a problem. Darwin hated blood. So that's a real problem. You're going to be like a 19th century doctor.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years, he just couldn't hack it medical student. So I tell my students every year, I teach a first year course about the history of life here in Edinburgh. Every year I tell my students that if you stick it through to graduation, you will have eclipsed Charles Darwin. That's true. But Darwin landed on his feet. His father was well connected, and father then got him into Cambridge, as we like to say, a lesser school. And so at Cambridge, he studied theology. So he actually got a degree in theology at Cambridge. Then his dad wanted him to become a pastor, just a county parson, to have his own little church somewhere in the English countryside. And Darwin hated that idea as much as being a doctor. So instead, he had this opportunity to get on a ship and sail the world. And he did it. So for 5 years, he sailed around the world on this ship called the Beagle. And it's that ship that left England and it went to South America and it sailed all around the world. And you have the Galapagos Islands down in South America, famous stories of Darwin studying the birds and kind of coming to this realization that life is evolved. That's part of the story. But what Darwin also did was when the ship dropped anchor in South America, Darwin would venture inland. He talked to locals. He talked to some of the indigenous tribes. And he would go out and he'd look for not only living animals, not only birds and stuff, but he would look for fossils. And he found fossils. He found bones of giant mammals. And they completely flabbergasted because they were so different from any mammal he knew in Europe. These were not foxes and badgers and deer and stuff. They seemed to have weird, Frankenstein combinations of different mammals, a little bit rodent, a little bit elephant, a little bit horse. So he didn't know.
A little bit rock and roll.
Little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, a little bit whatever. That stuff. And so he didn't know what to do with them. They confused people for a long time. This is back in the 1830s, Darwin's finding the book. It was only a few years ago that somebody found some DNA in some of those bones and a little bit of protein in those bones, put it through the whole paternity test, the whole DNA thing, and determined that these things are actually close relatives of horses. So they don't look much like horses, but we would have never known that if it wasn't for the DNA. Darwin never knew that. Darwin didn't even know there was such thing as DNA. So that just goes to show how some of these fossils over time, they've been collected and studied and scrutinized by some of the greatest minds in science. And they've been confusing, until new technology, the DNA revolution, the same sort of stuff that allows, you to find put the murderers behind bars or find the true father on one of the afternoon talk shows. That same technology helps us study fossil mammals and solve this riddle at Darwin.
Yeah, I owe child support to about 6 of my ex-wives over that show that found the DNA. Let's see. This is kind of interesting, too. America used to be a savanna. Savannah?
Yeah.
Savanna?
Yeah.
Savannah.
Depends how posh your accent is, but yeah.
I went to public school. Let's see. It used to be a savanna, which is pretty interesting. And I'm trying to find that place again. Much just like Africa was today. 12 million years ago, rhinos and camels for hell's sakes, and horses galloped across the Great Plains. That's crazy. What happened to the camels and rhinos? Like, did we evict them, or did we just treat them like we do most immigrants and treat them badly and they leave?
Well, they were natives in many ways. They were American natives, and you would never know it looking at the mammals we have.
Did the Indians kill them and eat them like we did with the buffalo?
No. These things mostly left, before there were really entirely these things left before there were humans in the Americas. So it's a stunning scene to conjure up. And this is chapter 8 in The Rise and Reign of the Mammals. And in the new book, this is all about the American savanna and other stuff that was happening around that time. And I start off with this fictional story, but one that's based on a remarkable fossil site in Nebraska, where thousands of animals were buried by a volcanic eruption. This is the Yellowstone Volcano. It erupted about 12 million years ago. It blew ash across much of America. That ash would have fallen like snow, and it would have killed and captured and buried a lot of animals. And so what we see from this place is called the Asphalt fossil beds in Nebraska. What we see from those animals captured in the ash is that if you were in Nebraska 12 million years ago, you could have gone on safari. It would have looked a lot like Africa today. There were rhinos, there were camels, there were horses, there were elephants. Incredible. And there were huge predators, these things that we nicknamed the hellhounds and the hell pigs, these extra big, extra ferocious versions of some of the mammals that we still have.
Isn't that just Texas? No, I'm just kidding.
Now, no offense to anybody, any listeners in Texas.
If you've seen some of those armadillos in there.
Well, some of those armadillos in Texas, absolutely. And they're encroaching now north, into Illinois, where I'm from and where my family lives. It's a weird thing. And, those are South American mammals, by the way. Armadillos have only been in North America for a few million years at most. They started coming up when North America and South America docked into each other. And that was only about 2.5 million years ago.
We should start charging them rent. What other things that we could tease out about your book? It's really interesting, like all the different things you can learn and find out about it. You're just like, wow, I never did that. Yeah.
One of my favorite chapters to write was chapter 9, which is all about the Ice Age, all about the megafauna, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers. What's really wild to think about is that these animals were here not very long ago. They died out very recently. You might think when you see a picture of a woolly mammoth or hear the name saber-toothed tiger, you might think these things are millions and millions and millions of years old, that maybe they lived with the dinosaurs. But no, they lived quite recently, and they only died out about 10,000 years ago. Our ancestors would have seen them and known them and encountered them and hunted them. There are caves in France and Spain that are plastered with drawings of woolly mammoths. This is like the first graffiti in human history. It's just painting after painting of mammoths. So our ancestors knew these animals. And back during the Ice Age, there was a whole zoo of the biggest, furriest, weirdest, wackiest mammals. Not only mammoths and saber-tooths, but there were sloths that lived on the ground that were more than 10 feet tall. There were armadillos the size of Volkswagen. There were beavers that were bigger than humans. There were deer with antlers that are bigger than a dining room table. In Australia, there were wombats that weighed 3 tons. There were kangaroos that were too plump to hop. And I just keep going and going. So these are the most amazing and charismatic mammals I think that have ever lived. And they lived very recently, and they only died out as the last part of the Ice Age was ending. And they really only died out continent by continent after humans arrived. So it's probably largely because of us, through hunting them and changing their environments, that things like woolly mammoths and saber-tooths are no longer with us.
Is there any prediction on when our rise and fall or fall is going to be? We already kind of know about the rise.
Yeah, I try not to predict too much of the future. Paleontology, we're good at looking into the past. We're good at drawing lessons for the future. I end the book with an epilogue of trying to talk a little bit about the modern day. But look, I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to be doom and gloom. That's not the point of a book like this. I want people to understand and cherish and revel in the deep history of mammals and look at that history to appreciate where we come from. And yes, to draw some lessons for the future, but I don't know if, X percentage of mammals are going to become extinct, if temperatures rise X number of degrees. I don't want to get too far into that speculation. That's too far removed from what I know, what I study. And I think I don't want to leave readers with the feeling that everything is just a disaster. I want us to treasure what's come before us and to use that appreciation to hopefully better understand our world today.
There you go. Well, I'm going to be showing my Siberian Huskies whenever they're bratty the chapter on how we domesticated them. And I'll be like, here's how we got you, suckers.
Make them read it until they.
If you know Huskies, they have a whole attitude. They just, when you tell them to do something, they just look at you and go, I'll get back to you on that. I'll think about that. I'm doing that. So I'll get something that I can have on them. Well, Steve, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. And thanks for coming on. Give us your .coms or wherever you want people to find you.
Yeah, it's just the best way to find me is on Twitter. It's at Steve Brusatte. So just Steve like normal, and then Brusatte is Brusatte. I do a lot of banter. I talk to people all the time. Anybody who's interested in fossils, who's read the books, who wants to know anything about dinosaurs, mammals. I love chatting with people. So please do take a look at that. That's the best way to kind of connect with me. And then, there again is the cover of the new book, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, just out. And, just really looking forward to seeing what people think about it. And I hope people like it. I hope it gives us, a more of an appreciation for where we have come from. This really is a book about our origins.
There you go, guys. Read that book and all that stuff. So would this be a prelude to the Bible? I'm just kidding. I'm just doing jokes here.
Well, depends on your perspective, right? But I reached humans, and then, hey.
There you go. Thank God I'm an atheist. So, folks, be sure to order up the book. June 7th, 2022, it came out. The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, a new history from the shadow of the dinosaurs to us. Get it wherever fine books are sold. But remember, stay out of those alleyway bookstores because you might get shanked in there or stabbed or need a tetanus shot. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.